welcome you guys. I really, really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're on a short run here, and so we've never actually done a remote podcast before, and I've rarely done one without Joe. So this is one of those where it was like, just strike while the iron's hot, and if you guys were able to lend the time, I would gladly take it. And I just have so many things to talk to you about. So I really appreciate you being here, really, genuinely.
Happy to be on. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, man. And Tony Airlines as well.
And Tony Airlines.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. But anyway, so, obviously, like, you're probably not familiar with our show. We're in different sort of worlds, but related. And that's kind of what I want to get to. I find myself turning people onto your channel a lot that are, sort of nerdy creative types, right? That are not necessarily car people. And then they find something in it, right? Because there's a lot more to it than just cars. And so for anybody listening that's not familiar with regular car reviews, go find it, go check it out. Your life will be changed. But really what it comes down to is you might have to, some people are maybe more with the toilet humor and maybe less with the toilet humor, but ultimately the impetus is writing and ultimate creativity, I think, is what drew me to what you guys are doing. I'm not exactly like a full-on car person. I'm super into cars, but I'm not like, there's levels to this shit, man. You know, like there's people that are like so knowledgeable that it's just like it's a myopic kind of consideration, and so you guys are I think a nice bridge actually to a lot of people.
I wonder why people. And how's my mic distance?
You're great.
It's fine? Okay. I wonder why so many people, like, the first thing they say is, I don't know too much about cars, but...
So you hear this a lot.
Right. Like, I hardly know that much because, we just do our research. Nick and I are really literature nerds first, and... by way of a commonly held focal point onto which you can throw literary concepts and toilet humor that kind of makes sense.
It's a bit of a departure from things that are supposed to be sort of normative in the automotive community, I suppose. Like, it's not something that's necessarily that we set out to be subversive. If anything, it was kind of setting out to just apply the things that we learned in grad school when we met, or at least from my end of it when I joined after the Avenger review. Or no, the Avenger review was my first one.
Was your first one?
Yeah. Yes. So it's and that's was our filthiest one. And so it's also one of those weird things where I try not to think too much about necessarily trying to do something that fits in line with what I think we're supposed to do. Because what we're supposed to do has been changing over the course of 5 years now, to the point that where we were when we started isn't really where we are now. I mean, it is in certain aspects. We still bring a certain level of literary criticism to it, and automotive criticism, and I almost feel like we're more automotive satirists than automotive journalists. But I
make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, well, I mean, so do I. It's part and parcel. I mean, it's the same thing of...
You got the numbers wrong.
Yeah. It's almost feeling like you're back in grad school a little bit, where...
Yeah.
You're... Every Monday, you're kind of waiting for people to break out the red ink.
Yeah.
And it's just, okay, well, here it comes.
In this case, it's Reddit.
Yeah.
It both has the word red in it.
So Reddit's sort of like the office hours.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Is it me, or am I super bassy? Or is that just my voice?
It's just your voice.
Yeah.
Everything's super flat.
One person is potted down.
I think that is Brian...
Well, now whoever... Me. That's not me. Me.
I love how we're on another podcast and we're still doing audio check.
Yeah.
Is it
for the audience? Pot is short for potentiometer.
Yeah. So we have gain, and they all have. Oh, we're on maximum compression.
Yeah, that's just to keep everything level. Yeah.
No.
Delightful.
All right. Sorry for people who may be listening to this who hear the air conditioner going in this hotel conference room.
Yeah, it's not nearly as clinically precise of a sound environment and anechoic chamber that our actual studio is, where there's trains going by and people wandering in the door of our offices and UPS guy or whatever. So, but no, just no problem. So one of the other things I think that I've been wrestling with as a creative and as an artist and just as a person for a long time, that I feel like I'm so glad to have you guys here to sort of just talk to you, right? It's like this funny thing. It's like so one of the things I think that you guys wrestle with, or not wrestle with, but sort of live or navigate in, is the notion of nostalgia.
Yeah,
and that is such a that's a really confounding and it's almost like an embattlement in a way, because I think I remember you once referencing like Samuel Hines or somebody, where it was
I'm glad you got that one. Not many people read Flights of Passage.
But it was something about like you can return to a place, but not time, right?
Yeah. You can. People go back in space, meaning physical space, because they can't go back in time.
Yeah.
So you go back to your old high school. I want to go back to my old dorm room and see if the graffiti that I put behind the mirror is still there.
Yeah.
Because I want to go back to 2001, which was, I think, my sophomore year in college was the best year, because there was the most amount of friends. Yeah. And I think Nick in one review said, when you're going out, you have your crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are friends that you never have friends like that again.
Mm-hmm.
There are different phases of life where each one you have friends of a type that you're never going to have again.
Mm-hmm.
When you're like 11 or 12, you have those friends that you go on those adventures with, and you're out on your bikes and you're getting into exploring the area around
your
where
Goonies
you live.
Friends.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And then when you become a teenager, you kind of have those friends that you form those sort of embattled kinship with, that sense that because we were sort of put in this crucible called high school, that suddenly we're going to I guess you're navigating the same problems. You're navigating self-confidence issues, whether it's about a girl, whether it's about sexuality, whether it's about like having zits, whether it's about having a date for this, that, or the other thing. You're going through those formative experiences, and you won't be able to have that type of friendship again, because you only really have those formative experiences once. Mm-hmm. And then when you're an adult or entering into that phase in your life where suddenly the cuffs are off and you're free and you don't have to check in with parents every now and then, you have that. It's the group of friends that you've discovered freedom with, or with whom you've discovered freedom. And so that creates a
parity,
certain bond.
right? Everybody's at parity in terms of life circumstances as well. Yeah.
And then adulthood, you have those friends that you're settling into adulthood with, where you kind of are able to commiserate over the sort of difficulties of adulthood. You're realizing that now, adulting, you have that common ground. But the thing is, with all these different friends groups, you have the capacity to have those friends forever, but it's exceedingly rare in a lot of cases for some groups to carry over. I've been lucky enough to know some people for my entire life. Now I don't see them that often, but I still feel like I can count them among my friends. And then there are other people who I thought I was going to be close with forever, and it didn't really pan out that way. And so if I end up writing something along the lines of nostalgia, this is why a lot of the writing ends up going back to nostalgia, because it's not saying that nostalgia isn't saying that things can never be that good again. It's just saying that in that imperfect moment, I was kind of formed, and
I love that.
Yeah, that's a line.
Yeah, it is. And so it's kind of wanting to get back to, or kind of having this feeling of wanting to get back to whatever it was that helped you become you, because you feel more like you in those moments and in those places where you were made.
Yeah.
Whether it was embarrassing moments, whether it was like great moments, whether it's just in a car that kind of smells a certain way, you know? And with sense memory and all that stuff, with smell, you smell something. Like if I go into a store and there's like a candle there and I just smell the candle and it smells like Christmas, and all of a sudden like you're having an actual flashback, you're unlocking memories you completely forgot about,
which is crazy to think about, because then you're like, okay, wait a minute, this brain is actually a really deep hard drive. It's just the it's just the indexing system that gets discombobulated or disconnected in some way, but you have these things that are external that are almost uncontrollable that will reassign those points of index to what you actually still have retained and not ever lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the hard part about nostalgia, is that I don't know what's all in there, you know?
But it has it's a bittersweet thing, right? Because it's drenched in mortality, it's drenched in the passage of time. There's a lot that is going on around it that makes it sometimes harder to just accept as being what it is. You based on the impulse that you get, the nostalgia that is enlivened by something. Some of it's good, some of it's weird, some of it's, you know, but there's like this wrapper around it that it's all good, even if it's bad.
Yeah.
In this weird way, because it just is. It's authentic. It's familiar. It's your experience. So I find that really fascinating. Like in terms of just I don't think that there's a lot of media in general that does a few things that you guys are doing. One is like the way that you sort of dance with nostalgia and the way that you guys leverage that and work that in a creative way and not in a kitschy, right? It's not it's really, you're just raising, like you said, you're just sort of, these are my references. Yeah. And then at the same time, you know, there's this point of there's a humanism ultimately, and
thanks for using that word. I love it.
It's a great word.
And there's a I can go further. There's relativism.
Yeah.
It's a very Jean Renoir thing.
Yeah, it really is.
So I find myself, and I would imagine a lot of your viewers probably are on this level where it's like I'm seeing all this richness, right? I'm getting all of this absolute richness, and I'm like grabbing my wife, like, you gotta watch this, and then she's just like, what the hell is going on? You know what I mean?
Talking about the time that I shaved the inside of my asshole. I did it right before I had this class in DeFrancisco building. On both ass cheeks, now that the hair was gone, felt like two honey hams just sliding back and forth inside of a warm Tupperware box. Those were my ass cheeks.
That's a great thing of anyone who's tuning in and doesn't know who we are and we're listening. And
you might have to explain that.
It's a pleasant first 10 minutes, and then now we're starting to slide into, okay, this is what we're actually sort of like. Well, what we actually do. For the most part, when Brian and I sit down to write, we literally are just trying to make each other laugh, I suppose. Like in a lot of instances, it's just, okay, that's a line, that's cool, and then we read back what we have, and it's forming the basis of a review, because you want to have like the right amount of narrative, but also the right amount of jokes and the right amount of information and maybe the right amount of history. It's like this complex formula that, okay, it's not like I want to, martyr myself and say that it's a really hard thing. It's just tricky. And it's trickier than I think we sort of let on. But it's something that, I consider it a privilege to get to do it, because when I was growing up, all I ever wanted to do was write. And now it's kind of crazy to me that I get to do it. And yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's weird when you live within the eye of the storm. And some people say, and I say this about Tony, I don't know how you do what you do. And people say, how do you write something new every week? How do you come up with these things? I don't know. They're just there. Meanwhile, joining us in the studio, he hasn't really introduced himself. Tony, you can check him out on Instagram. Yeah.
Tony
Yeah,
Airlines.
Tony Airlines. He's an airline pilot for a company. But knowing that this guy flies airliners and he's like 10 years younger than us, and like how do you just the runway's this big when I look at it from the sky, and you just land there.
Well, also just doing it, you're actually responsible for other people.
Yeah.
I can see like flying, being like, I don't know, I'll figure it out, man. But it's up to me. I'm just taking care of my own ass.
It helps to have a head start in aviation. You know, you guys probably had a head start in writing and film in a way with college classes and whatnot.
Well, yeah. I mean, I met Brian in an intro to film class that was basically a film studies class. It wasn't really an intro thing, because it was whatever the graduate equivalent of an intro to film class is.
Yep.
And that's sort of where we watched Renoir and God,
I love those classes.
And Ozu and all this other stuff that's
8.5.
Yeah, it's
weird
all,
things.
It's all great stuff, and it all sort of stimulates your urge toward expression.
Yeah.
And I mean, it took a while to kind of get confident in what I was writing, to where I think a lot of the stuff comes out easier now. It's sort of not as difficult to do it as it used to be. It's still tricky, but for me, it's all about sort of condensing everything I've learned and trying to create the best, like, streamlined version of what it is I'm good at.
Well, that's why I think that what you're doing as far as the channel and what you guys do is it's so routine. It's iterative by nature and routine by nature, and anybody that puts themselves through a regimen and is just doing something, and we gotta put a video out on Monday, like, this is what's happening. That's the best place to be, because then once you see that you haven't fallen on your face, and you've survived it for so long, then what do you have to be afraid of at that point, right? Like, it's like, hello, you're a writer.
Yeah, there's no spell check on YouTube. And that's great.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to get a bad grade because I forgot some commas or...
Mrs. Terwilliger noticed your extra punctuation.
Yeah. The innuendo. And Brian, your writing is pretty good, but you tend to get off track. You got to stay focused here. But I like that now I can take non sequiturs upon non sequiturs.
Yeah, it's whatever review is, whatever we say it is. Like an RCR review, I mean. Like,
Queen
review
is whatever I say it is.
Yeah. It's just I'm trying to find like a less jerky way of saying what I already said. Which is, I mean, it's not whatever we say it is. It's just that if for whatever reason we decide we want to go on a tangent, like, we can go on a tangent and that can be the entire video.
There's no producer here.
Yeah, and there's
we are.
Well, yeah, and there's no sort of necessarily a format to stick to. Like, in a vague sense, there is, but I mean, for the New York Auto Show, like, Brian reviewed the bathrooms.
That almost seemed like I saw that, and I was wondering if that was almost. I can't figure out if it's sort of like sort of a fuck you to the whole thing, or because I mean, obviously it's your nature, and I'm not saying it's not natively of your interest and historically of your pursuits, bathrooms and all the things, but I guess I'm just wondering, like, for you to say, like, that's all I'm going to do. I didn't know if that was something that was kind of, I don't know, a response to something.
I was done with the New York Auto Show. Like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
I mean,
so then it is, right.
Right.
Okay.
It's the whole reason to go is to hang out with people from Jalopnik. And even then, they were pretty busy. I saw Jason Torchinsky. I got a hey. He gave a hey. I saw JF Musial, and I got a hey and hey. And I'm like, everybody's working. It's kind of dumb. And there was nothing new in 2019. There was that one truck, the Reventon or whatever that thing was.
The bricky electric thing?
Yeah.
And it was just sort of a... Well, I mean...
You couldn't get in it. They had a little lucite wall around it. A little half, like, 2-foot wall. And like, you can't cross this. You can't sit in it. So who cares? Are you going to make it? Maybe you will. I don't know. I can hear Fisker Karma talking on the phone. And I guess maybe everybody's waiting to 2020 because it's a nice round number to have something new. But half of like doing the New York Auto Show is to just be in New York. And yeah.
Everything in 2020 is going to be about like sort of acuity or vision or it's going to be
hindsight.
or hindsight. Introducing the new hindsight. No, but so the other part of it too is so you know we talked about sort of nostalgia, and I've been sort of unpacking that and kind of trying to reconcile with that in my work for a long time. The other piece of it too that I think you guys are and this is sort of exemplary of this, but you are pro conversations, right? You see, you've said things that I've heard you say that sort of say that allude to the desire or the need for more conversations, just as a loose concept.
I don't follow.
So this is a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you said something about, I think it was the Toyota Sarah, which is pretty recent.
Yeah.
It was something about, there was a line in there about sort of like, this is a car that starts conversations in a
okay, yeah,
in a world
that was the next line.
Yeah, and that kind of it's an easier way, I think. And now see me flubbering for things. It's that in the world in the kind of modern world we live in, which is going to sound really pretentious, but it's that I think we kind of need a shorthand for getting to a conversation. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes if you have something about you or on you or that it's an easier way to get things started, because most people, I feel, they only need a little nudge, and sometimes like the car as a conversation piece can be that nudge, and then it brings out that gregarious sort of intuitive side of yourself so that you can actually talk to other people and be more social.
Yeah, it's like an unlock code for people's genuine, most authentic selves. You just have to have something that's kind of triggering that in some way. Like, I hate to use the word triggered, but
trigger.
I need a safe space. Don't tell me about your Toyota.
When I was looking at just a random classic car, and I came across Ralph Nader's book on Unsafe at Any Speed, and all the cars in there, especially the not the Pinto, but the Corvair.
Yeah.
When I heard about the Corvair and did all that research, I'm like, wow, this has some story behind it. This has history. And back to the conversation piece type of argument, that's really would be the main purpose of such a car, is to, bring it somewhere. Someone asks what it is. Corvair, Ralph Nader, politics.
Yeah.
And
Liberals.
That would be the gist of the conversation would be, it's a cool story piece, like an animal on the side of a wall.
Really, I mean, well, and I love that you guys bring that into the car world, because it's really like my car. I have people that stop me all the time.
Sure.
And what I love about it is that, my car is not a overtly cool performing car or whatever, but there's just something about it that's relatable to people, because most people stop me and they say, that was my first car. And so, like, getting back to sort of that early stage of like, this is when certain really heavy life things were being imprinted, and so I'm just going to associate my sort of cerebral development, time or whatever to this thing, I love that, the conversation starter for my car that it provides is basically, that was my first car. Or like I mentioned to you guys earlier, if you're under 25, it's like nice DeLorean. Does it go to 88 miles an hour? And then I remind them it's a Toyota. But the idea that like, I had a really weird experience just the other day where I was in 2-lane traffic, and it was a long stoplight, and I had the windows down and everything because I have no air conditioning. So anyway, I'm driving up and I drive past this car, and then these people had their windows down, and then they leaned over to me while we were stopped at the stoplight, and they said, I can't believe you just drove up, or something. I didn't know who they were or anything. They were like, I can't believe you just pulled up right now. And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, we were just having a conversation. This woman was driving, and this man was in the passenger seat. This couple, and the man was talking to me out of the passenger seat, right next to me in the line, and he says, "This is so weird, man. We were just talking about our first cars, and she had just said." In this moment, like seconds before I rolled up, that her first car was a Toyota Celica from the 80s. And you don't see many of them because they're all rusted out now and they're gone.
Yeah.
And so it was like the novelty times like multiplied over the temporal plane of like what the hell. It was a real synchronous sort of strange moment, but none of those weird things would have happened. And so I enjoy like having just strange interactions with people.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm sure with the Falcon, right?
Yeah, with the Falcon, I mean, maybe it is self-depreciation. I don't think in real life I'm that interesting, but when I drive that car, I have a nice diving board for some pre-programmed conversations that make old people who otherwise may hate me like me. So, every interaction I've had when I'm driving the Falcon, people are nice to me, and this is almost like could be a psychiatrist's bench, because I believe if people really knew me correctly, they would hate me. But as long as I drive this old car around, I can wear the costume of an upstanding moral citizen. So, and with that, I am good. And now, on the other hand, the car is really fun to drive around.
Absolutely.
And I can take lots of people, which, on the other hand, is a substitution for having a real family, because I feel weird that I'm the last person within my original group of friends, no kids, no girlfriend, no anything, boyfriend, what have you. So I hang out and do a lot of work on the Appalachian Trail, and I like to take hikers, take them to the Walmart, take them for resupplies, take them to their hotel, because in that tiny slice of time, I have a family or a crew going back to like the 90s times, and I'm driving around in a car I probably would have really liked to have back in the 90s. So yeah, there was one really good line that Nick had about a car that deposits you in the era of your best self. And that is how I get when I drive the Falcon. And also, classic rock never sounds so good coming out of one of those things.
Mono AM, you mean?
Yeah. I didn't put it. It used to have speakers in the back, and some owner in some point in its history, the back of these old classic cars, and for people who normally listen to like this podcast for like MMA and art history and stuff, the rear deck of most classic cars, behind the rear seat but before the rear glass, is just cardboard. It's nothing. It's super cheap. So all throughout the 70s and 80s, when you'd had the old cars and you want to put four speakers in it, you would just get out a knife, like a box cutter or a utility knife, and just cut an oval in here, and
or like score it and just punch it out.
Yeah. Just here's where your speaker goes.
6x9s from Radio Shack. Yeah.
Oh, Jensen's.
I did that. I had the plywood. I had like a plywood speaker box. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
Back in the day.
They don't even fasten it to the body. It just slides around. It's make a really heavy wood. Anyway. I replaced the cardboard with a new piece, and was able to buy a dual cone single speaker. It's very strange. It's really 3 speakers. It has a large sort of bass speaker and then 2 tiny tweeters in the middle of it, one for left, one for right. So your low tones in your bass, it comes out mono, but your high tones come out stereo. So you do hear.
So it has some dimensionality to it.
Yeah.
So the low frequencies have no dependence, or low frequencies do not come from space or direction by science, and then the higher frequencies are what connotates space. And so you were saying it has a left and a right, sort of little nodes inside the center of it that spring out sound left and right.
Yeah.
Funny.
So, and that fits where the original mono speaker would have been. So, I normally don't listen. I used to listen to classic rock more in high school, and then it just sort of faded away. Although 99.9 The Hawk still comes in clear on the radio. So, but I have my mix on my Sansa clip that goes in there, and such great hits such as Sister Christian, Night Ranger.
Yeah.
By Sister Christian. Can't You Hear Me Knockin' by the Rolling Stones. Montrose, which is a slightly deeper cut. That was Eddie Van Zandt?
Towns Van Zandt?
Towns Van Zandt?
One of the Van Zandts?
Or was it Sammy Hagar before Van Halen?
So there's a Van
I mean, we have the
Van Hagar.
Van Hagar.
Yeah.
We have the internet right here. I'm just going to look it up.
So yeah,
Montrose.
There's something about classic rock that I find really interesting in the sense that it's been sort of encapsulated. It's like a cabinet that you can just sort of go into, and whatever's happening, you're going to feel great about the door that you're painting right now, or like it's got a role, it's got a function.
Yeah.
That's what's really funny is that we were talking about, like, my wife is a 8th grade science teacher, and her kids, when she'll play like 80s music in the classroom sometimes, and the kids now, they call 80s music oldies. Like for us, like oldies is like 40s, 50s, or like classic, like sort of, whatever, Connie Francis type stuff. But anyway,
I heard "Welcome to the Jungle" on 99.9 The Hawk. Yeah.
That's when it just...
It's weird, like the little sort of kind of excess slots they have for that they leave some. Like the classic rock stations will have like 10% of their rotation that they've been running for 20 years.
Yeah.
But they leave that available to, like, it's like, why is like Third Eye Blind, or it's always some weird.
Throw me off a bridge once they start playing Third Eye Blind on the Hawk.
Jumper.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming.
It is coming, because you have to refresh the cycle after your listenership dies.
Just to clarify, Montrose, now I have the internet. Montrose was a California-based hard rock band formed in 1973 after lead guitarist founder Ronnie Montrose. The band's original lineup featured Montrose and vocalist Sammy Hagar, who would go on to Van Halen. So
Very
it's
nice.
Sammy Hagar behind that. Yeah.
A friend of mine that I've worked with a lot, actually, and done a lot of music with, was in a band with Sammy Hagar called HSAS. This is back in the days in the early 80s when all of the 70s supergroups were splintering, and then they would all form like weird fledgling like acronym based supergroups. Like it was a formula. It was like the new thing that people did. But yeah, it's just funny, like the classic rock thing. I mean, I'm cool with it. But yeah, I mean, and you guys have a lot of, we're a little bit different, right? My I don't want to say like I'm a generation removed from you, because I'm not, right? But by like 8 to 10 years.
When did you graduate high school?
90.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it means something really, like,
That's
even
10 years. I graduated in 2000.
2003.
2010.
Yay.
2010. Oh yeah. God. And the guy flies planes.
He's in charge of passengers who are no longer referred to as people but as souls.
Whose idea was that?
Yeah, 1990. So my high school years, my freshman year was 1986. So 86 to 90 was the time, and that was a weird sort of fulcrum, or kind of fulcrum point, really, because everything went batshit like in 91, 92. Right after I finished high school, like all of, sort of whatever you want to call it, grunge and sort of hip hop turned the page, and like all this stuff was happening. It was a great time.
Yeah.
But we were in the time, like 86 to 90, we were, my culture was like, we were in defiance of hair bands and hair metal. That was like, so there was really good shit going on, punk and what, like, Jane's Addiction doesn't get credit for being like what they were back in those
totally.
Yeah, like back in those times, like Nirvana is like the bookmark of like, okay, that's whatever, that's when that page turned. It's like no. It was Jane's Addiction, Nothing Shocking in 1988, and when that shit
Bad Brains.
and Bad Brains. Yeah. I saw them in clubs with like I saw Bad Brains, Fishbone, Jane's Addiction, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Ministry, like all of that shit we saw in clubs, with like 200 people, or whatever. It was. I love that I'm old enough now that I have like stories like this.
Yeah.
'Cause I remember like when I was that age and I would talk to old heads and they would be like, "Yeah, I saw Hendrix." What, But
My whole thing was Dave Matthews Band. Seeing him in Tony just went ooh. And I'm like, well, I just so. Like
they just played
he
Nashville.
played the Vet, which means Veteran Stadium, the old stadium in Philly. And it's like, yeah, I saw him in 1998, and this guy in front of me was like, as all concert stories go, it's like, yeah, I went to a Dave Matthews concert and I smelled weed.
yeah.
Go back to high school, tell everybody, wow.
So can I tell you my story of that real quick? I saw the Police on the Synchronicity tour in 1983. I had a cool older brother that would like take me to shows, and I remember distinctly wearing my like 3-stripe Synchronicity shirt to school the next day, and I was like 6th grade. I'd be like, smell my shirt, man. It smells like weed, because I was at this concert last night. They were smoking weed. It was the deepest thing at the time. But yeah, like my first concert was Rush in like 1982 or 83. So it's in Genesis, like all that shit. That's kind of like that was my sort of launch point.
I was having a conversation with someone online, and I mentioned Pearl Jam. And this person said, "Why you listen to a dad band?" And I'm like, "Whoa!" To him, it's a dad band. Wow. And I'm like, okay, my favorite song is from Pearl Jam, "Yellow Ledbetter." They're the one that everybody makes fun of, and that he just kind of shitted that song out. But yeah, it's kind of like this kid trying to come to grips with his brother maybe not coming back from war, and he's walking along a beach and he sees a flag from someone else's a house that wasn't his along the beach had a flag, and he like tries to talk to people, or no, he waves to them and they don't wave, and that's like the song, but it's the 90s, and you just drag out that concept for a slightly longer 303, and you're then man, you got a hit.
I mean,
then I Am Mine, which is a much more positive for Pearl Jam
I like that
song.
Jack Irons drumming era. But anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like in the 50s, Albert Camus would have gotten a whole novel out of Yellow Ledbetter. Just, well, they didn't wave back.
Yeah.
Woe is me. It's a human condition.
So, like, is there, what are the fringes of what you guys have read that you feel like, I would love to reference this, but this shit gets too weird, or like there has to be thresholds or levels to where
County Appointed Furs.
That's
by
Sarah Orne Jewett.
Yeah. All right. Look, it's been going on 2 years, and I'm trying to finish this yawner of a modernist novel.
Well, that was assigned in the class that we had.
Yeah,
and
I bullshitted my way through that novel.
Yeah,
I hardly read any of it, and I just put a bunch of stuff in, and I guess Dr. Vogel. Well, I think we had we had
Vogel for that.
Yeah, that's right. But did I have to actually write about it? Was there any questions about that book?
I don't think we had to write about it, or else I would have been far angrier than I was. That was the first book that I read, and so far one of the only books that I've read where I actually wanted my time back. And I remember telling Vogel in class, and he said that like he couldn't disagree more.
Yeah. He loved that book.
Yeah, I'm like, I respect your opinion.
Someone goes to some little quaint ass motherfucking place in Maine. Can I swear on this podcast? All right, he said yes. That's, Hallmark fresh. And you ever get a Hallmark card and there's nothing written on it? And it's just a bunch of birds?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Give me some inspirational quotes for crying out loud.
So, okay. This, like, retired or school teacher? Who was the narrator? Who is she?
I felt like it had something to do with, like...
She lived in a school or did a
something.
work. She goes to this town, and everybody's super... They're not even quirky. They're just, well, we're old, and this is a tiny town in Maine, and it's like it takes place in, like, 1890s. I don't know. It's a... Okay. Imagine like every Stephen King novel where bad things happen, but it's kind of a nice town in the beginning.
And then it never becomes
as bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm peeking. That's county appointed first. Everything's great. The end. And the whole point of reading the book is you're supposed to take a tactile experience away. You're supposed to know how this place smelled, looked, felt, to feel the earth, pick the flowers, make dinner with the people. That's it. It's like somebody's home movies, and you're reading it.
It's like the Koyaanisqatsi of minutia.
Oh, what's that word?
The Koyaanisqatsi of minutia.
Educate me.
Yeah, Koyaanisqatsi is that like famous documentary film from the like 80s that's just visual narrative. It's like like if you I was like typical film classes, like an intro to film class would typically show this Koyaanisqatsi.
I mean, I'm sure I've heard of it.
It's basically like there's no dialogue. There's not a beginning, middle, or end. It's just
the
this,
French film's pretentious and boring. I love French
but it's just
films
beautifully
too.
shot.
Tickets,
And it's visual narrative.
I mean, it's basically literary tourism, where the whole idea is that you're supposed to feel transported to a place because you're reading about it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
End of story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, George R. R. Martin, half his books in A Song of Ice and Fire are literary tourism, where not half, that's ridiculous, but he does kind of get lost in the weeds of world building and making sure that you taste these rashers of bacon and the bread and how it smells coming out of there, or the fish that's been burned black, but that's how they like it for whatever reason.
And that concept is nothing new. We'll go all the way back to the Morte d'Arthur. When you talk about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, yes, there's some kick-ass battles at the end of it, but the first part of the book is just how delicious this big feast is.
Yeah.
They go through everything that's on the table because no cameras exist. And not anybody can draw. So you have to, okay, how rich are these people? Well, let's talk about every single thing that's on the table. And then the Green Knight comes in and they talk about the braids that are on the axe. Yeah, but they go on for pages.
Yeah, and it's because in a lot of experiences, or at least, well, okay, I don't know this, but my presumption has always been that the reason that they take these sort of detours is that for a lot of the readership, these people will never experience anything like this in their lives. Like, they don't have a frame of reference for what a rich person's dinner looks like, of what a banquet, what a real feast. And then in the Jewett side of things, like back to County Appointed Furs, there are rich people who won't know what like the provincial life is like.
Yeah.
So that the, sort of rich person laying on their chaise or whatever, reading the novel, can get a sense for what it's like to maybe be without, or not without, but maybe not so, breaded up.
Right.
It's just suddenly you have this very provincial life, this existence that doesn't demand any sort of societal prominence, I suppose.
You get that also in modern terms, but in much more succinct in Charles Bukowski's Post Office, because that is literary tourism for people who want to see how a complete degenerate lives. Like, he's delivering mail and then fucking people, like, on the job. He delivers this lady's mail and goes in, and in a very Joey Diaz way, just, I ate her monkey,
Fuck her tremendous. Oh, I stuck my dick in. Stuck her dick in. I slapped her tits around to her back.
And that's the kind of stuff. Bukowski's great. I mean, himself, like, you look at Charles Bukowski's like alcoholic smoking face, like, that's a writer. Right there. But I didn't read Ham on Rye because then he really digs into his parents, and his parents were downright awful to him. So that's where Adam Carolla said, you want, like, in a very I have to hold my tongue here. In a very Corolla way, kidding, not kidding, he says, well, if you want your kid to be really good at something, smack him around a bit. There's like...
I get it.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
It's
this sort of tortured soul becomes has to find a vehicle in this more pervasive and impacting way than a person that's coming from a comfortable existence.
Right.
But so that's another thing I'm sort of curious, when I just met you guys today, so people listening, I was able to sort of join these guys and sort of be a part of the process for the day, and shoot some stuff with, and lend them some drone work. And so it was a neat thing. And when I was sort of contemplating like how can I be helpful, or what it is that I can contribute, I'm sitting here thinking like, what do I even fucking care? I don't even fucking know these guys.
Yeah.
Right? Like, fuck them. But in reality, it's sort of like, but like when I greeted you guys today, one of the first things I said, I didn't plan on saying it, I just said it, but it was just sort of acknowledging that it's a super weird place to come from, to meet somebody that you guys have created so much shit, and you've got like diaries, and like I feel like I have all this sort of knowledge, right, or awareness about who you guys are, or at least some formed opinion, right, or it could be totally wrong or whatever, but I have something to come from where it's like you guys don't know me really at all, and so that's a really strange inequity to start with, as a human, from one human to another. So with that, I'd like to talk about your childhood. No, no, but I guess my point is just that I find there's so many sort of you guys are very confident and very assertive in what you do.
Oh, okay.
You have to be. Oh,
I guess like while we're out on the film thing, I have a schedule, stuff I need to film. Time is that minute hand really moves when we're out there, and whatever happens on a film shoot, it's my fault, even if I'm not responsible.
Yeah,
which I'm stealing that line directly from Garrison Keillor. And the thing that really drained my energy this day was the on the road shots, because.
Are you talking about today?
I'm talking about today. Like I was getting pissy at the end just because the blood sugar was low.
Yeah,
it was a long day. But navigating the midday traffic of Nashville, I did not expect that much traffic. Yeah. And having to be aware, and I'm driving a strange, very kind of fast, kind of cool French car, and I'm having to monitor this shoot at the same time, learn and form an opinion about this car at the same time I'm being a producer. Yeah. And that's a lot of system resources being used. And by the end of the day, I'm at the back of your Celica just trying to remember what's in the case and what's in my pocket, and verbally saying, in my left pocket is this, and my right pocket is this. Yeah. This goes here, that goes here. Yeah.
You should know also, like, what one of the things I spent many years of my life doing is producing and recording records for artists and bands. I have my skill set, I think, for knowing how best to. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but I'm aware that people are enveloped in their process and in their own sort of compression of stresses.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had things with some well-known artists where it's like, holy shit, this girl, she came to my studio and we recorded for 2 weeks, and I had to tape up every vent in the place because she couldn't have any air on her that was moving, or she would freak the fuck out.
Weird.
Like, there's just but here's the thing, at the same time, she's a really beautiful person, right? And she's doing something that's really hard to do and is deeply emotive and wrenching. It's a hard process and it involves a lot of people, but ultimately it's her responsibility. So everybody, I think, has those things that just like that can kind of bubble to the surface as you're sort of dealing with that. But my point, even launching into that, was really not about. I was really just talking about like more your channel and like what content you guys are creating. The shit you're making is fucking awesome, and you've been doing it for a really long time.
Well,
and very
5 years,
consistent.
but thank you.
That's a fucking long time to do anything. That's a long time to have. Like if you were married for 5 years, people would say, "Well, that's you gave a good a run." Like
good for you.
Yeah, like it just didn't work out. It's the 5-year itch or whatever. But anyway, so no. But my point is just that I find. Maybe paradox is not the right word, but you guys are both extremely sort of open and transparent about a lot of things that I would not be transparent about necessarily by nature, like about your lives and just the things that you talk about, right? And I'm not saying like I disagree.
Just talking about my dick all the time. That's mostly what I do.
Yeah. Well, and so that's a thing. But just you guys are very humble and very open about a lot of things that are uniquely you as people and as humans in a way that I don't see very often. Like you guys have, I'm sure everybody has a veil. Everybody has levels of veils, but your veil is way the fuck back here.
The first time I shaved my pubes was the first time I got them.
Well, I mean, because you got to know where the line is, right?
What the hell is this?
What the fuck is happening with this? Get it.
But the other part of it, I just want to talk about that I find interesting is like you talk about what it is to be in Pennsylvania. You guys are, unapologetically Pennsylvania, and I love. I actually am very envious of regionalism and regional identification because I don't really have that. I'm from North Carolina. I've lived in New York. I've lived in Seattle, I've lived in Nashville, whatever. I don't feel like I'm like I'm gonna ride or die like some state that I'm in or whatever. And I'm not saying you guys are to that level, but you're.
I am.
But
I'm absolutely.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to presume that for you, but you're allowed to ride or die. But when you talk about sort of the things around sort of the perils of social isolation, doing what you're doing, right? Like that's that
bugs me.
What bugs you?
Not being able to talk about creative things with because aside from Nick, I think we're the only people in maybe like 3 counties doing living a sort of creative media-based life. Everybody else is go to work.
Yeah.
So, who do I hang out with? I hang out with, Tony here because he works a weird job and has time off during the week.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he lives all the way out in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, but it's enough drive. Did I get the right town? Yeah. Okay. It's okay. Like that's why he's here because you got like a week or 2 off. You're not scheduled to fly anywhere. All right. And you have the superpower called Crew Pass. You just get on planes like
Hitch a ride.
Like
Put my thumb out.
the legal version of Catch Me If You Can. You just get on a plane, you don't pay, and off you go. It's him. I have my friend Matt. I'm trying to think of people I hang out regularly.
So I was going to say Ted.
Oh,
maybe.
yeah, Ted Stoltz.
Yeah.
The graphic designer who designed the RCR logo.
Oh, cool.
But he lives down in Lancaster, so that's like an hour and a half away. He's a full-time graphic artist, and he's his own boss, own company and everything. But he is really diligent. Like, I can't hang out all this week. I am working. Because he goes to work, and then he works out at the gym. He's got big guns. That's what he does. He makes art and then lifts.
Right on.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
But then he's also in the motorcycle, so we hang out and ride. Yeah.
Do you think there's some part of that sort of isolation that actually you don't want to quell, or that you feel like is necessary energy, or some undercurrent that like? I have a feeling, I'm just going to take a guess, that this is something that you've always had, right? Like a feeling of, everybody grows up with this feeling of alienation or self, like I'm ascribed as, I'm different or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But
big fish, small pond.
Yeah.
Like you go out to LA, oh, you do YouTube? Great. So does so many other people here, and they have their own studios.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Have you had to like check your ego in your process yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I met some other big YouTubers, and they have people, they have agents, and they have marketers, and they have interns. We had an intern for a little bit.
Honestly, like all you're saying to me about that though makes me feel almost sorry for them. I appreciate that people
they have things.
Because I know you guys are doing just fine, and the fact that you have it under your umbrella and you have it contained in some respect, and you have it formulated to a way that you feel like you can iterate this thing and it's comfortable. It's not over. You're not reinventing the wheel every week. Sort of like what you said, like there's elements to sort of the writing that you have to kind of represent. And this is not knowing that you need to represent this because you're tied to an audience that you're a slave to. It's just, you just know like that's the healthy balance of what feels good for us.
Well, yeah, in a very writerly sense. I mean, I think a lot of the time sharing is more... Oh, I'm good, thanks. Sure. Yeah, there you go. It's the champagne of beers. The whole thing about sharing is that it's more for me than it's as much for me as for the audience. Because last year I did this whole video about like my grandmother's passing, and it was about how like within that month I had the end of this like casual relationship, which wasn't really a relationship, but still,
awesome.
I had a lot of investment in it, which I didn't realize that I had.
One of those.
Like I didn't realize how invested I was in it, and then and so I was already in the dumps. And then after that, I had a personal friend pass away, and then like the week after that, my grandmother like goes into a coma, and now we have to go to New Zealand, and I'm weighing the options of like, can I leave my family during this? And my mom's like, just you have a job, because in my mind I always feel like if I tell people what I do, they're not going to respect it as a real job. And so, but apparently everyone in my family, like to them, like I'm the one who like made it, I suppose, in the sense that of making it being you get to do something you enjoy doing for a living, like not in the financial sense, not in the whole like I'm on like TV or anything, you know, it's just you're getting to do something you love doing. And so when all those sort of anxieties hit, and I had no one to talk to about it because I have to be strong for my family. And I mean, there were people that I could talk to about it, but I wasn't able to sort of express to the extent to which I feel capable of expressing. And so I just started writing, and when I was done I recorded it, and then I'm like, screw it, I'll just like put footage together and put it out as a video, and hopefully maybe someone will identify with me on it or have been through the same thing. And I got a lot of like messages about that, about comments and emails from people who were saying, well, yeah, I've been through the same thing, I know what it's like, thanks for putting out that video. And what's funny is like it doesn't have a lot of views, but but that's not the point, right? The point is that I had something to say and it needed to get out of me. And so whenever somebody says like, hey, I want to start a YouTube channel, what should I do? It's like, don't start it if you don't have something to say. Like it's the idea that like when Brian started RCR, it was the whole thing about not liking the types of like typical car reviews that you would see of like, this is this.
Parodies born of disdain.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Yeah, and it's along the same foundation of, you know, don't do a video essay channel if you don't feel like you're saying something different or presenting it in a different way. Now, granted, it's to the point where I think anything that we would do would kind of feel like what we would do, because we've been doing it for so long that even when we break away from formula, it still sort of feels like on brand in a way, or at least I think so. Just because, you know, that's just kind of what we're like. You know, there's going to be a little bit of weirdness in it, but even the ones that don't have that much weirdness in it, we try to make up for it in like lines of just like, okay, that's a line, or that's an insightful thing, something that people are going to quote to somebody else later, like that thing of wanting to be a part of other people's conversations.
And you guys have done that like in such an incredible, like, I've spent my whole life making all kinds of shit, music and I've created a lot of things over the last 30 years, but I can't imagine what it must be like to have like the catchphrase thing, you know, and it's not, people get it. And obviously a catchphrase happens, right? Like you just repeat it, but there's something substantive to it as well, and it really translates.
Yeah.
But like that's got to be like sort of weird.
It feels as if it's outside myself.
Yeah.
Like I didn't create it.
Yeah.
You guys did. I just said a word a few times, and it matters a lot to you, and it's. Like, here's my real car, here's my toy car, or name your other more dirty one.
Yeah.
Well, that has weight because you bought it. You created that thing. I had a bunch of lines in there I really wanted to have become things. I didn't become anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Seinfeld with the soup Nazi, and they thought that the line coming out of that was anti-dentite. They thought that was going to be the big like catchphrase or whatever, and it ended up being like no soup for you, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's that thing of you don't necessarily you control your content, but in a very death of the author kind of way. You don't dictate how it's interpreted, the car like reviews sort of thrive on this idea that all cars are subject to any interpretation outside of what it's approaching it in a literary sense of wanting to assign meaning to something that maybe doesn't have the same meaning that the creators intended. And so, cars can be transformative. People do all sorts of crazy things to their cars, and that go beyond what they were intended to do. And I just find that kind of thing fascinating. And also the whole idea that we could possibly find something to say about it that's outside of how it could be interpreted.
I love it. It sort of reminds me of like I don't know if you've ever heard of like the temporary autonomous zones. This weird writer, Hakim Bey, he had this whole bit about poetic terrorism, and he was talking about how convince someone that they're the heir to a vast but completely worthless fortune, like 500 acres of land in Antarctica, or an aging circus elephant, or an orphanage in Bombay. Like it's weird. But he's like, his whole point is like, for a moment, these people are going to, before they're able to sort of analyze what the hell you just said, they're going to feel this greater sense of possibility for themselves and their existence. And so by you illustrating or defining through this experience what the gulf is between where they are now and that perceived reality that they kind of caught a glimpse of just for a minute before they sorted out that it was total bullshit, that's actually poetic terrorism in the sense that the space in between there, now they will seek out that themselves in their lives and fill that in other ways that are of inspiration or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing both of you two from an exterior perspective as well, because I don't get involved in production. I don't get involved in writing too much. I did today, yes. You're right.
You were an actor.
Yes. This is true.
And a damn fine one.
I generally don't do that, and it's cool seeing from an outside perspective of how they can engage their audience and how the audience reacts to what the content is that they produce. I'm part of like Facebook groups, Instagram pages that fawn over the content that gets produced, and it's just wonderful to see such an interesting reaction. It's sort of like an airline dipping their toes in the water of new routes, in the sense that, okay, we're going to fly from this little outside airport to Florida, Tallahassee, North Carolina, wherever, and the airline's like, well, I guess it might work, and they don't know how it's going to work. Some people maybe all the people will flock to Orlando, not Nashville, vice versa.
Yeah.
It's a very volatile thing, but it's wonderful to see how it works and if it works in your favor too.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that flight from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to the Orlando Sanford airport was packed.
Yeah.
This nowhere kind of secondary airport or third airport in Pennsylvania to the lesser Orlando airport, and the only carrier that flies in and out of Sanford is Allegiant, and people love it. And it's everybody from the mid-state PA who want to go to Florida,
who don't want to drive to Philly, and who don't want to pay the Philly prices of American, Delta, United, the usual. And you guys have sort of tapped the niche market of car guys who don't want to maybe see that, $1 billion professionally edited type of
can we get this
thing
build
you see on
done
TV
in 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that with the rise in...
With unlimited budget and a TV crew, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that the higher the production standards go, the longer the production days and the longer the turnover time. And, you know, it's not like we couldn't just, like, take a week off or several weeks off, but we kind of resolved to always have a video every Monday. So we don't really have the luxury of just saying, well, you know, we're going to just do the hell out of this one thing in terms of production.
Yeah.
Like, your help today is probably like the most in terms of different types of like cinematography.
Oh yeah.
Than we
like what we just filmed and took like an hour doing at the end with the climbing and stuff.
great.
People are gonna love that.
Yeah,
that's gonna be great. That's
really
gonna go
interesting.
straight to the top of our cars the second that comes out. I don't know if we should put a narrative on the beginning of that or just get some ambiance noises. I'm gonna have to like maybe just get some sound effects for that because you know it's a drone shot and all you're gonna hear is but
Well, there's no sound.
they're silent. Well, then we got to do you know, I got to go out with my H4 and just find some gravel and it's gonna be like 2 different sound effects, like left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot,
Like the shittiest Foley ever.
yeah.
maybe some random people saying things in the background. Hey man, what you...
Oh yeah, the weird like sort of acid chatter.
Yeah.
Like bad trip, like brain chatter.
Yeah.
That's like in those video games. Yeah.
It'd be the pedestrian voices, but the 16-bit quality Grand Theft Auto Vice City voices where you can barely comprehend what they're saying.
Yeah.
Did that crap all the way up until 4.
So also, like, I would be remiss if I didn't like press you guys on this one last part, which is to say that you know, back to the writing. You guys, I love that I've seen you press this before, like where people are like, how do you learn how to write or how do you get good at writing? And it's so it's like, how would you get good at cutting a yard? Like, you just got to do it. Like, you just like suck at it. It's fine. Like, whatever, just go.
There's no wrong way to begin writing.
Yeah.
Now, granted, if you don't know the basics of sentence structure, okay, now we've got a problem here, and you have to learn subject, predicate.
We've got here a problem.
Yeah. Each paragraph will be about one thing or an idea. And then we'll move on to the next paragraph when it's about something else. So, okay, now, granted, that doesn't really apply when you're talking about a narrative for a visual medium, but at least group
I want to
your
get into
ideas,
that, by the way, but go ahead. Yeah.
At least group your ideas together. Write something, put it away, and then read it out loud the next day. And a lot of people don't want to face that type of, now that's self-congratulatory, isn't it? Because it's saying, I do this, therefore I'm better. But then again, all the YouTubers out there who just hitch their wagons to their own explosive personality. Fine, it works for you. This is just how I am. And I mean, but there's that one YouTuber who made the Marble Olympics, and that's amazing.
Huh.
Yeah. Okay. This is like you. Yeah, here we go. All right. Remember that game, Marble Rally or Marble Shoots or something? It's like a version of Connects or Legos, but most of it is tubes, and you build this little racetrack, and you dump marbles in it, and they go wee, and you watch them go.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Tony knows what we're talking about.
Office.
Right.
Is it like a table? Is it a physical game
It's
or a video game?
It's a physical game, but there's no board or anything. And it's okay. You know that game that's in every doctor's office for toddlers that has the beads on the metal wires that you go around like that?
Yeah.
And they have a beginning and
The
an
drunk
end.
abacus.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Now imagine instead of wires, they're tubes, and it's like a little thing that you can dump a marble down, and you can watch it go
see.
down like that. That's
great.
So the Marble Olympics is a guy made very elaborate versions of that with different colored marbles, and he gave them names, and he narrates them in a very middle America broadcaster, just facts as if this is an Olympic event.
Whoa.
As it's
That's commitment.
Oh yeah. And he times them. There's a scoreboard. The sets are, there's other marbles as if they're people watching this. It is so wholesome. And in a world where every night the news is terrible, you can look at this, and these are just some marbles going down, and there's a very plain spoken announcer telling you about this. And then they finish. Wonderful.
We need more of that wholesome content in the world.
That's why I love there's a American, I don't want to say American, a world hero who uploaded all the Kmart radio files.
That's right, you
reel-to-reel
showed that.
tapes. And you can listen to Kmart radio from 1986, complete with commercials. And I'm like, awesome. You're talking about drapes. This is... It's very unfashionable to, right now in 2019, have positive memories about the height of American capitalism of the 80s, but yet it was there, and we're going to Kmart, we're going to buy some pillows. And you were there as a little kid, and they had the popcorn and the hot dogs, and it's Kmart.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was the biggest deal. And obviously, like, Dan Bell and people like that have really, really sort of stirred that soup in great ways. But, yeah, and so that's sort of circling us back through the nostalgia thing, too, right? Where it's but, yeah, I think about what was the biggest deal I could possibly experience as a kid. It was like, will you take me to the what were X department store on Saturday?
Toys R Us.
And it was for me is before, like, I remember I had my first computer. It was a TI 499A. It was a Texas Instruments.
Is this a desktop thing?
It was like a keyboard that had like a slide cartridge on it. And that was really all that it was. And it had a little bit of RAM. And then TI 499A. And then you would hook it up to your television because you couldn't afford a computer monitor at that time. That was ludicrous. And then also, if you wanted a floppy disk drive, that was extra. And the floppy disk drives at that time cost more than the computer.
What is that? Wow. That is something.
That was my setup. But here's the thing. We had the computer. My parents were like, you want a computer? I went to like some 6th grade enrichment program, and I was like, and I played with one of those, and I wanted to be a journalist or whatever the hell, writer. And so they got one of these for the family at the time. Obviously, it's like buying a small car or whatever. But anyway, it was a big deal. But here's the thing is, we couldn't afford the floppy drive or the hard, there was no hard drive, right? It didn't store anything.
Did it have...
You had a floppy drive separate.
ROM in it?
It had RAM. So it had RAM, but you didn't store anything.
What did it boot to?
So it had I'm sure it had like an integrated circuit or some sort of basic sort of cartridge or something that it booted from that was like sort of the BIOS or whatever it was at the time. Okay. But you would basically just load up into a blank slate of basic computer language.
Oh, I remember that.
So then I would get my mom to take me to the computer, or not to the computer store. There were no computer stores. I get her to take me to Kmart and take me to the magazine aisle. And there was one computer magazine at the time. This is like 1982.
Wow.
And there was one computer magazine. And I would get the one computer magazine about these things called computers, and I would take it home and spend the whole Saturday, because inside all the pages, they had code, basic lines of code to do just random shit. So I would sit there all day and just like type feverishly in basic, line by line, and then you'd have syntax errors and you have to go back and like fix it, and you'd wrestle. I'm like 10, 12 years old, whatever, this time, so I'm not really good at stuff. And like I would get through it, and then I'd finally like hit run, and it would just make like a smiley face of like X's and O's on the screen or something. Yes. And then it was like, holy shit, I typed in all this stuff. I gave this set of instructions and it rendered something back to me. That was like an incredible psychedelic experience, epiphany of a thing. And then we didn't, like I said, we didn't have a hard drive. There was no floppy drive for this. So then when I was done, I would just turn the computer off. It was all gone.
Yeah.
Damn.
And then like if I wanted to, in the earliest days of computing, if I wanted to do something on the computer, I had to type in all the code for the thing first and then run it in RAM.
It's like playing a video game that had no save states at all.
Yeah.
Like the very first Super Mario Brothers. You know, you had to start from the beginning every single time.
Or Turtles in
Side
Time.
note, I didn't realize that there was a cassette output on it and that you could actually run audio RCA out of the cassette and then back up your data on the cassette. I didn't know that at the time. So that was just how I was rolling. But you could do it to that. Weirdly enough, I had a drum machine for a long time that it's called an EMU SP12 that was made in 1985 that had the similar thing. So, and I was using it in a band that I was in a few years ago, this 80s drum machine where I could back up the sequences that I made but instead of backing them up to cassette, I would just back them up into the audio input of my computer and make MP3s and then store them in the cloud. And I would show up at a show to play, I would use this drum machine in my set and I would just pull up my phone and then run audio out to the cassette RCA input of this 85 drum machine. So it was like weird that like stuff like that was cloud ready in this disjunctive kind of weird way.
Every now and again, even though I'm not a music producer or have any right to get into that, I see another, and maybe I guess this is the audio equivalent of fast car. I want a good car, get a Corvette. That's everything. I'm gonna cruise down memory lane. Nothing's faster than a Corvette. It's the best. It goes like a bat out of hell. It really rips. It's nothing's but every now and again, I want an 808. Even though I have no business.
It is the Corvette of drum machines.
Yes.
That's fucking hilarious.
Every Corvette I've driven with, actually, no. C4s I don't really like. But I know some people are going, C4s. I mean, ironic that that's like the 80s Corvette, even though it went kind of midways into the 90s.
The C4 you said?
C4.
Yeah.
Yeah, C4 went from 1984 to 1990.
1990 balls.
Yeah, the LS, I think it was 96 was the first iteration of the LS, and that is the C5.
And by the way, just a side note, for anybody listening that's not really into cars, you should know that the LS is sort of this mythical engine that is sort of, it is the thing that everybody wants to put erroneously into other cars and see how it does.
Right.
And sometimes it actually works out really well, but it's basically this really reliable, powerful engine that was made that people fawn after, and so it is part of
It's weird that people fawn after it. You can get these engines for $200 out of a junkyard.
Yeah.
An LS is like, it's the Corvette engine. Well, yeah, kind of. All it is the General Motors small block V8
engine.
It's just engine. It's just an engine. Yeah. It just so happens that it's a V8 that is used in many different applications. It is used in trucks, vans, yes, the Corvette, also in some Buicks, some Pontiacs. It is a medium displacement V8, although they do make them in larger displacements. It is very overbuilt, and they made tons of them, economy of scale. What this engine... because it's so cheap and available from junkyards, or you can pay from Summit Racing Magazine, which is sort of the Amazon of cars. It doesn't have to be from the physical catalog. It's just something you read while on the toilet. You can get it from online. Lots of aftermarket parts for these things, but they run just fine with stock. They also take to forced induction, meaning turbochargers. You can do nothing to these, put a turbocharger on and it'll make more power and it won't blow up. That's the big thing. They are insanely durable for the price point. Yes, there are more durable diesel stuff that Volkswagen made, sure. The S, there is the 1UZ all aluminum V8 from Toyota that is also very good. But for dollar value, the LS is great. What is the dollar value version for music? I guess I want to play rock and roll. Here's my Stratocaster.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a good guitar. Is it revolutionary? Not really. Maybe at the time. I mean, I don't see. This is me doing the I don't know much about cars. It's me doing the I don't know about music.
Yeah.
But when I like the sound of the Telecaster, the first one, the twangy stuff. Yes, it's country.
It's more piercing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that. There's some sort of feeling there. It's not to me the Telecaster is someone staring into whiskey straight and contemplating their feelings and thinking that maybe their youth lies somewhere at the bottom of this glass.
Yeah.
Whereas a Stratocaster is cheeseburger in paradise. I want California cheeseburger. Like that's it.
Yeah, like Telecaster's almost
85% ground round. You know, that's it.
Ground.
I mean, Telecaster's like pointillism, right, or something, versus like I don't know, like abstract expressionism on the Stratocaster. It's like Hendrix could
play it
articulate
upside down. Yeah.
and articulate on a Stratocaster in ways that most people couldn't. But yeah, no, it's funny. Like I definitely get a sense that you have a little bit of music geek in you for sure. I know that you played drums. I'm also the lifelong drummer.
I just sold my drum set.
Oh, you did?
Because I hadn't. I looked at it and realized I didn't play it in a year.
That's a good reason to sell something.
It was a Yamaha Express 4 electronic drum set. And I'm like, this is great. I'm going to play this. I won't annoy my neighbors. And then I realized they can still hear it. It just sounds like someone playing Rock Band upstairs.
It's almost worse, right? It's just like clack, 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 clack. Because it just seems like you're playing one surface.
Yeah. And also, and they, I looked down like, this is great. It breaks down really easy. I can go play with Nick. I can take it everywhere. And then you realize it's a pain to put this thing back together. It's got all these wires. It really is easier to have an acoustic drum set and just make 5 trips to your car.
It's tough. It's really tough for me because I'm in a weird point right now in my life because this is the longest I've gone without playing. I mean, it was so much a part of who I was for so many decades or long years. And so to now be in a place, I know I'm getting old because I'm just like, their drums are just so loud. You know what I mean? Like just they're loud and you have to carry, it's just so much. And then you try to economize with something electronic, but it's like, now I'm dealing with MIDI? Like, fuck, you know.
In the beginning, it's like, hey, these things never need tuning ever. Great. Oh, wait, I need an amp. I need to plug them in. That's another thing, having to plug your drums in. Before, you never appreciate that your instrument is self-amplified. Just hit it harder and it's louder.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. I'll never forget this. I was recording a session once with this drummer. It was a band, and I was producing and engineering the session, and the drummer, I'll just be straight up, the band was really good, but the drummer was not
quite your tempo.
He was pretty good, but it was just he was one of those guys that was really good at playing live and just would bash it out, and people would really respond to his playing and everything. But in a studio environment, it's more clinical. It's more like we've really got to understand what's going on here. And so what I did was I put, because I'm a huge fan of like artistic constraints to almost like my own death. So what I would do for the drums when I was recording in my studio is I would put it's a microphone called a Coles 4038. It's an old British ribbon microphone that is it's got an aluminum band inside that's like 0.5 microns thick. Whoa. Right? So it's just like, it's like a model of the human ear, essentially. Okay. But and these microphones are pretty expensive, but they're still being made today. But exactly the way that they were BBC broadcast microphones from the 40s. Whoa. But they still make them now in exactly the same way. And they're the only, like, you can't even get aluminum cut to that, whatever, you know. Anyway, these mics are tremendous. But what I would do is I would just set up, set up all you want, man. Drums, cymbals, I don't care. But you're going to get one microphone. Mm-hmm. And I would set up a Coles 4038 in the room. And if you go back,
how far from the set?
So it depends on various things. But I mean, I would say think of it as like 6 feet away or something.
in front of the kick drum, that level, or like eye
kind
level,
of like
or?
maybe just above the kick drum, sort of maybe more pointed at the snare.
Okay.
But kind of like just above the top surface of the kick, maybe.
Okay.
But there's no rhyme. Like this is not formulaic, but I would say generally. And so what you do is, since it's a broadcast microphone similar to these SM7s, they want a lot of compression. They're meant to be slammed with compression. So the same thing with the BBC broadcast mics of these Coles 4038s. So you would basically set these up, and I would set them up with one microphone. Maybe I would set up like a stereo pair as like room or whatever. But basically, I was just setting up one microphone, and I'll never forget. We were getting sounds for this record, and we were working on the drum sounds. And he was like, "Hey man, so the snare's too loud. I don't know what we can do about it." And I was like, "Okay, I know what we can do. Either you have two options. You can play the snare quieter, or you can play everything else but the snare a little louder. It's up to you. Like whatever you want to do, because there's just one microphone." And it was you could see his brain just melt. And I was like, "No, you don't. Like when you have I had a grand piano in the other room. I was like, I don't have 88 microphones on my piano.
Yeah.
Like I'm not miking each string and then mixing it later. You know what I mean? So drums are just like a universal, all-encompassing acoustic.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have you ever had to hand a drummer some marimba mallets and just say, play with these?
Yeah. Yeah, especially on cymbals.
Yeah.
Just trying to like not have so much attack.
Yeah. All right. You see these pillows? I'm going to take the cases off of them and I'm going to put them over your heads. You play through that.
Oh my God. So like my coming to pass with drums was when I was in my early 20s. I called up. This is before the internet really. This is like 1996.
I'm going to put an entire blanket in your bass drum.
An
entire comforter.
So that's where I was, right, with drumming. I was 23, 24. So in 1996, I called up my favorite. I just found his number and information in Seattle. I was living in North Carolina. This guy named Michael Shreve. He's the original drummer for Santana. Have you ever seen the Santana or the Woodstock concert film? Like the young
I'm
kid?
aware of Santana.
Yeah, right. So he was the drummer for Santana, and he made all these other records after Santana. But anyway, I called him up, just 411, got information, called him up, yo. We had a conversation 2 weeks later. I moved to Seattle to be his drum tech. Little did I know when I got out there. And so like for me, this is like piercing the veil of like your idols or you have, everybody has that moment in their life where you're like, oh, I'm not different than these people. I'm just another person. They're just a person, So I had that experience when I was about 23, 24, but I go out there and I'm thinking, this is so cool. I'm going to be his drum tech and I'm going to, tune his drums and help him, and he'll teach me stuff and we'll have this symbiotic relationship. And I get out there and I find out that he's embarking on this new drum setup where it is a 24-piece drum kit and it's all DW stuff, so it's all like stamped with note values inside the shells, like A, B, C, whatever, and they're all harmonically tuned. And it was he would stand up and play it, and it had like several kick drums and like all these drums and cymbals and shit. It was the hardest. It was like going to the mouth of the beast of being a drum tech. Like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And we go and like he would play the opera house, or whatever. And I was like 23. I would have to schlep all the shit, set it all up, tune it all, like everything. So I learned early on, like, how can I just have this be efficient and not have all this shit? And then and sometimes you just need a blanket and a kick drum, and and that's just fine. You don't need to have everything like melodically tuned on a tuner. But anyway, so we got to head out here soon, but I wanted to press you guys a little bit more just on one thing, which is so like, for instance, I'm working on a film right now with somebody where they're a performance artist and they've done all these sort of happenings around town, and I've filmed all this stuff for about 1.5 years. She's got this great narrative that she's put together about sort of people and place and why she does these things. And the struggle for her as she's writing it is, we have all of this footage, and then here I am trying to write my sort of point of view and then how to marry those two. And I thought that would be a great question for the RCR guys, because that's essentially the exercise that you guys are doing all the time. You're taking essentially long form or, some sort of broader narrative that's constructed separately. They're separate impressions in some way. And then you're taking footage and then you're sort of putting those things together. So what can you speak to that is about your process with respect to narrative and marrying narrative authentically to footage, and how to, like, because there's weights and there's precedents, and
What am I talking about, and what did I film that closely matches that? I wish it was more complicated.
Yeah.
Because when we do a film shoot, now, there's two types that we do. One is infinitely more common than the other. And today you saw the common one. Let's film a whole bunch of B-roll, bunch of different things, and then we'll write the narrative and fit the video to the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
The other way is when you pre-write. It's a
Yeah.
car I'm familiar with, and you can write the entire thing out. We do that maybe a couple times a year. Now that makes the film shoot a little bit easier because now we know we have specific shots
Yep.
that are going to be really poignant. But
Do you record the voiceover too before?
No, mostly the voiceover is always done afterwards.
Okay.
And sometimes it's done a month afterwards. So we get to sit on the car for a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's so many people who do car reviews like, this is all my first impressions. Our impressions are first, but we sat on them for a month. We didn't have to because right now we're recording this on Tuesday,
14.
Wednesday. Yeah.
Oh,
Wednesday.
No, it's Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Oh,
May 14th.
Oh, my watch is wrong.
Yeah.
It says Wednesday.
Welcome to the future.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So, okay. It's still the 14th. And the embargo lifted on the new Supra with the BMW engine in it. Now, everybody's like slamming out. They got to be first online. We'll eventually get that in maybe like 2 years. And then we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
It's like,
sometimes we get cars like right when they come out. But usually it's someone who was first online at the dealership and said, here, RCR, we got one. We got it.
Yeah.
No, we don't. When's this coming out?
This will be out in about 4 or 5 days.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Actually, 2 or 3 days.
Okay. All right. So we won't blow up like this particular one, but a bunch of people did it already, but we got way dirtier with it. We didn't get the vehicle dirty. We just were really, honestly, kind of mean to it because it has a very, it has the most reliable brand. And while there were some glaring manufacturing issues with it, this is supposed to, this is supposed to be the vehicle that nothing's ever going to break. And like, wow, there were some dumb manufacturing stuff that went into this for something that's supposed to be so durable and so utility based. I can't believe they did this. And it's even slow. It's slow. And it looks fast. I'll tell you about it off air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I started sort of doing solo videos where I write and record and shoot the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I found that's difficult with respect to sort of formulating a narrative is that sometimes I pre-write a narrative and then I go to experience the car and I realize like, oh shit, now I got to redo this because it wasn't what I expected it to be.
Or that becomes the narrative, like the disconnect between the two.
In a way, it makes it easier, but it makes it so that I wasted a lot of time trying to coming in with preconceived notions,
Yeah.
and so there are times where like I want to hate something and I don't, or times when I want to like something more than I do and I don't, and it's just that same thing here, with the tandem videos, the usual RCR videos where, we're writing together and maybe we don't necessarily line up with everything, in terms of viewpoint, but we have to find a way to mash those two narratives together into one sort of cohesive narrative. So it ends up being sort of like, hey, this is the devil's advocate perspective, or this is just another way of saying a different thing. But the easiest way is sort of as you're in the process of making whatever it is you're making, that you're kind of taking notes, because I always have my notebook on me, so it's easier for me to do it because I'm not actually like out with a camera. I still work the camera in the back for on the road stuff, but that's not the point. It's that I can actually take notes, and as things hit me, like write down in the notebook, or I put it on my voice recorder on my phone, and just things that I want to say, things that I sort of view about what it is we're doing, the car related bits. And it makes it much easier to sort of formulate everything. And this doesn't really help your friend, because I'm saying, I guess, take notes while you filmed the thing.
Sure.
But
And then some of that has happened, but go ahead.
But another thing is kind of like remember why you did it, which is, it sounds really pretentious, but it's also anytime I feel like I'm stuck and need to write my way through it, I try to remember like, well, why are we doing this car in the first place? And it's like, okay, well then you just keep writing until something sort of falls out. Like the whole idea of writing is that it all starts from being sort of a good reader, and it doesn't matter what you read. It could be the newspaper, it could be an article on Collider, it could be a screenplay, a stage play, a teleplay, it could be anything.
Have a familiarity with the sequencing of words in some purposeful way.
Yeah. But like seeing other people or reading other people's writing is good. Like the more I read, the more I want to write, because it starts burning up in me of like...
I start hating the author. Like if I'm reading something, like, you're wasting my goddamn time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel that way about some screenplays I've read. It's a hobby, just reading scripts, but it's also kind of sort of invigorating, or it's also sort of didactic in that I'm learning things about what does and doesn't work. You know, even the things that don't work, I still find fascinating because, you know, there's certain scripts that I read that have really weird structure to seemingly no purpose. And it kind of, I can see where they're coming from, but also telling myself that even though I'm not dealing in fiction-based narrative, there are still things to glean about structure from these types of screenplays to try to figure out how to sequence these thoughts that I'm having, or to maybe format it in a way that it has sort of a dramatic element to it.
It's sort of like there's a reason to listen to avant-garde jazz. It's just like spreading out the vocabulary of music in some weird way that now when you come back to just sort of conventional storytelling, you just have like a broader palette and like a relational comfort to the structure that was maybe not there before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
It's like doing the whole Ulysses thing.
Yeah. And I in my Google searches the other day, because I wanted to kind of start a conversation on Twitter with whoever would be willing to engage with it, which is like... the line that I wrote was that Ulysses is so far up its own ass it has hemorrhoids for sunglasses. But I ended up not posting it because I'm like, that sounds like a really pretentious tweet. And also it's like, I can't really explain or defend why I don't like Ulysses. I just don't like it. Yeah. Like, I get that it's avant-garde. I get that it's brilliant. I get that it's well written. I get that it's doing all these subtextual, metatextual, textual things that I, you know, do and don't understand. But at the end of the day, it's like, at the end, I'm just bored reading it. Okay, he went to a pub and now he's having like ginger beer and peas soaked in vinegar. It's like, okay, great. And now the final chapter, it's just one long sentence without punctuation. It's just like,
so there's no shame in completely reading the Spark Notes for Ulysses.
Yeah.
Just first of all, know what the hell is happening. Great. Good. Now that you know what's happening, now you get to read everybody's inner thoughts. Like, it's Leopold Bloom, it's
Molly,
it's Stephen Douglas, and they're all just going about a single day in 1909
ish, around there. Isn't it just a retelling of the Odyssey?
It more
or less. It's in a very vague, roundabout way.
But by the way, like, I can't help but also notice that you guys, if you just take the archetype of whatever the hero's journey, you guys, you're probably aware of this, but also not aware of it. But from an outside point of view, looking at like observing what you guys make, and then now just sort of meeting you, hanging out for a day.
It's cool, isn't it?
It is cool, but it's also like, this is fucking hilarious because you've got okay, you've got the heroes. You guys are the heroes, okay?
I'm sorry, I rolled my eyes on radio.
Right. But then you've got...
Take the compliment, Brian.
But then
Thank you.
Right, but then you've got these mentors, right? You've got like Bruce Henn.
Oh, yeah, Bruce Henn's the man. For
You know
those
what I'm
people
saying?
listening, yeah, Bruce Henn is a master mechanic from Hamburg, Pennsylvania. And him, his team, his wife, he is a car nerd. And he is very meticulous, works slowly, but he builds things that don't break. He tried to get when Discovery Channel was doing their all car build things, he was trying to get on that.
It doesn't seem like his nature from what I've observed.
No, he's very calm. He's very zen.
Yeah.
He speaks slowly, deliberately, calmly, and he's friendly. He'll have dirty jokes. He had this one mechanic who worked for him who now works for Penske, which is a trucking company. Tony Rumble, different Tony, and he was the joker. Like you'd be welding or you'd be working on the media blaster, the thing where you put your hands through the rubber gloves and through the holes, and you spray the sand silicate and you de-rust things and you restore them. He'll throw firecrackers at your feet just to see if you're not going to move when you're holding something heavy. Throw firecrackers at you. Don't drop it. It was fun. But Bruce Henn is knowledgeable in a way that you can only be when you've lived the mechanic's life to... I don't know if he sought out to be one of the best Mustang mechanics, the guy. You want a 3-valve modular engine to make 1,000 horsepower, he'll do it. And he'll make it work. And he does the 3 fingers rubbing together. That symbol means money. Money. Like he says, all it takes is this to build money. But I think producers would have difficulty making it fit a television format that you could watch with the sound off from behind a bar.
Because he's a sublime character. He's not a character.
Right. It would be a very calming car show to watch. Like, here's how you build this. We assemble these things.
Bob Ross.
It would be, he's the Bob Ross of car builds.
Little puffy clown.
He isn't that talkative, though. He prefers to work things out. He would need a narrator to describe what's going on. And usually by the time I floated the idea of doing stuff with him, but really at the end, he goes home, he's got a little daughter, and then it's family life. And when he goes home, there's no more car stuff. It's all family things.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he is a hero in my life.
Yeah.
I want to be around a guy like that just to catch the crumbs of his knowledge of working on cars.
Yeah, just the same as you want to be around John Coltrane or like anybody. It's just like, oh my God, like these people are possessed by something in a way that... I want
to be around Tony. Like
Tony Airlines.
He has, and I mean this in all compliments, Tony, you're 27?
Yes.
You're 27 and you talk like you're 47. Because, but I mean that, like nothing phases him. Because it's the pilot right stuff mentality. I would have anxiety to no end. There are all these buttons, and you have to know a different language and all the phonetic alphabet. And you're switching the radio to talk to different people on different frequencies as your as your airplane moves from the localizer to the general to this, that. You have your first officer and you...
Yeah, I'm glad I have one of those now.
To delegate things to. And now you have 2 engines and you move them. That's like spinning plates to me. Oh, that's a trite thing to say.
I mean, still true though.
Yeah.
It takes the right stuff, which is a movie, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's about breaking the sound barrier and like the beginnings, I think, of the Apollo program.
Oh, yeah.
It's much better than the Ryan Gosling movie, which was just noise.
Do you see they're coming out with a Catch-22 movie?
Oh, yeah.
It's like a Netflix original.
Yeah.
With everyone. Ensemble cast.
Well, I don't know how they're going to make it.
I just find it like curious and pleasurable and great, right? That you guys are the archetype and you don't perhaps think about it, but just the idea you have this series of different sort of heroes, and then you have your sort of sojourns, you have your sort of things, your Appalachian Trail thing.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. You have like these solitary pursuits, right? Like you have things that you sort of gather energy from, and then you sort of come back together, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got this sort of unified kind of energy, and then you make these things that are like reprehensible and immoral and beautiful.
A turn across a threshold.
But it's a very it's rare. Like, you have to understand, I've just never perceived anything like this.
Thanks.
And so that's why I reached out, right? I'm not like, I got shit to do, right? But I just really wanted to be able to meet you guys and take the time and be able to be helpful and contribute in some way, hopefully meaningfully. And just to try to like talk to you guys about perhaps some things that maybe you guys don't normally get to talk about. And so hopefully we were able to do some of that.
I like talking about music because we had this whole thing like when we were in the UK, and our host was for the UK. And sorry for the name drop, but I just thought it was so cool.
So did I.
That our fixer and host for the UK was Tom Clark, the lead singer of this band called The Enemy. They had,
It was a #1 album.
This is early 2000s. Mid 2000s.
Yeah, no, it was like mid 2000s.
Okay. Huh. Yeah. Anyway,
mid to late 2000s.
Music producer, everything, and but like my first memory of being at his house was getting diarrhea and having to walk past the gold records in the hall to go shit up this guy's bathroom.
Yeah. And then it's just kind of like, as you're in the bathroom, there's also all these little things that I didn't even know were things, like the heated towel rack.
Those are
just
things.
Like, this is so good. I'm wrapped in a towel and it's hot.
You're like, what kind of excess is this? You're like, oh, this is fucking awesome excess.
All Tom wanted to do was talk about cars, and all I wanted to do with him is talk about music.
Yeah.
It's like, I live in this thing all the time, and like all I do is talk. So I like to talk about things other than cars.
Yeah.
It's like me and planes, and not talking about planes, but talking about cars.
Okay.
It happens after me being in the aviation business since I was 14.
Damn.
And now I'm like, can we talk about not planes? Maybe.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was it's funny, I was talking to Tony earlier because I was saying, I'm a licensed drone pilot, so I've got this Part 107 certification. I've had to take all these, study and take these tests and all this shit. And I was telling Tony earlier, I was like, man, it's too bad that like they don't apply some credits from the Part 107. The FAA doesn't give you credit for the Part 61 or whatever for like it's kind of a student pilot rating. And I could tell, like, Tony, you were there was one part of you that was like, yeah, go fuck yourself. You're flying a remote control goddamn helicopter, and you want credit for like anything that vaguely applies to what I do. I'm not saying
he flies a Bombardier CRJ 900.
Like, you're looking in the ceiling of the museum today and be like, I could fly that. I'm sitting here thinking like, I don't even know what that is.
I don't want to fly that.
There are a few sketchy ones. There are a few rusty ones. There are a few questionable builds.
But yeah, so on the way out here, guys, I know you got like a whole night to have, and you guys traveled and everything. So I just want to get it done. But I just, well, first, I guess I'll do a prologue. I'll tell people like where the hell they can find you. But if you wanted to like tell, because I know like Nick, you have your own channel. You have some other things.
Well, it's more or less just
your own channel now.
Yeah, it's a depository for family-related videos that I do with my nephew.
Better than a suppository.
Yeah, very much so. And so it's not a channel that I actually plan on doing anything with. Like, it would be nice if for some idiotic reason it exploded. But like, I'm not actually trying to get anything.
And where can people find this thing that you barely care about that you love doing?
No, it's called Limited Time Roman. And
I love that.
It's because my nephew came with the idea to review limited time only food items. And so we just kind of started doing that for whatever reason.
Great.
But there are other things on there like vlogs and deleted. There are some like deleted scenes from like an RCR video that I would work on. Like my New York Auto Show video, there were like some deleted jokes that I just threw in the New York Auto Show video that I did with my nephew. So that was fun. And you can find me on Instagram at the Roman Nick. And then the same handle for Twitter. Guess I just get my media following up so that the sponsors come knocking and be like, here, we will give you $500 to promote this thing, this box of...
this loot box.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your Bluetooth widget.
Yeah. My personal channel is just called Mr. Regular, and right now there's only one video on it, and it's a vaporwave video mixed in with air traffic control chatter from PDX. No, that was JFK. But I have another one one was on the regular car reviews channel, and I think it was
Some other
JFK, and like ground traffic was yelling at some guy because there was this tug that was going in the wrong direction.
Always happens.
Yeah. Always happens?
Oh,
Okay.
Man, New Yorkers.
So yeah, Mr. Regular. There's going to be more music. There's going to be more vaporwave stuff, and
We
probably
should
more
talk
hiking
more about
things.
that. Yeah.
I love the vaporwave genre. It's like crawling inside a tape cassette being played in a Pontiac 6000
Yes.
on the way to Kmart or to be local Boscovs to Pennsylvania.
I've got records that are made only on 80s drum machines and 80s synthesizers as a rule. Like, it's all the OG shit. I have many aliases, but this one's called Good Rester. I'll tell you about it later. But anyway, but regular car reviews is really like where it's at, and then all these tangential things are equally important because it's part of what these two guys are doing separately and together is a really an amazing thing. And I love that you guys are very different, but at the same time very aligned. Maybe right brain, left brain. I don't know. Maybe there's something hemispheric or it's not for me to analyze.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Who gives a shit? Just it's awesome, and you should check it out. And it's hilarious, and it's insightful, and it's funny, and sometimes you get left with big questions. You ponder postmodernism versus modernism, and the culture snake eating itself for 3 weeks, and you're like, why the fuck is this guy populating my brain with all these concepts when I'm just trying to like learn about a car and like I'm too high for this right now or whatever. No, but and then Tony Airlines, you can be found
on my Instagram, Tony Airlines.
He's a good follow.
Yeah,
Funny follow.
Lots of aviation content, funny stuff, videos. The occasional live stream where I'm just in the cockpit. Here's what it looks like at work.
Yeah,
fun stuff.
Like 3,000 buttons. 3,000 buttons. Which one do I press? Which one do I press?
He was doing a live stream where now he couldn't press all the buttons, but I was watching. I was like, "Can you just turn the windshield wipers on?" And I'm like, "Yes, this jet has windshield wipers." And for some reason, that was really cool to me. That if they don't work first of all, they're not in sync with each other.
Yeah, they aren't because they're independent controls.
That's so weird. Like you have to one switch for one windshield wiper and the other switch for the other, and they're never in sync, and that drives me nuts.
Yeah,
they're going like.
Oh my god!
And it has an intermittent, but it's kind of pointless.
It's a horrible intermittent.
It's like I got in a Ford Edge once, and I was like, I would never have this car because the wipers go like this.
But could you line up?
I can't do it.
Could you line it up so that like you hit the switch at the same time like you're launching nukes?
Yeah.
From my perspective, airline windshield wipers is like trying to get your turn signal to line up with another car, and it's the same make and model of your car, and it won't. You ever notice that? They never, ever do.
The timing of the relay is just a millisecond off at all times.
Yeah.
Just want to get your bat out and just bash it over the turn.
I fixed it.
There.
All right, hey, really, thank you guys for all the time today and everything. It's been a blast, and listeners, go check them out, and I'll talk to you guys all later. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
We're out later.
Cheers.